So we change the names here also, score update label, and in the grid we want it to be in row number 13, column 0. We change the entry as well, score update entry, and the grid is going to be row number 13, column 1. Let's run it and see what it looks like. And there we have them, our widgets. Here we can use this delete button. And down here, let's just create an update button where we can click it and then we update the records. As usual, we first write a comment and say create the update button. And the update button is going to be equal to update a button equal to a button widget in the root. On the text, let's say update. We put this button on the grid. We say update button dot grid, and it's going to be in row number 14, column 1. Let's run it and see what it looks like. And there we have it. Our button is exactly where we want it to be. Let's just change the name of this button to save, because when you're updating something and the next thing you want to do is actually save it. If we close it and run it again, now it says save. This is much better. Now, all these buttons do not do anything yet. So the next thing we are going to do is create functions that are going to control these buttons. Before we do anything, remember we said we also need to have a show records button, a button that we can click and then all the records in the database are going to pop up. So let's just put that button right here below the submit button. So we first write a comment and say create the show records button. Show records. Yeah. And let's just call it show records. So show records button. BTN, short for button, is equal to a button widget, and we want it to be in the root. And the text should say show records. And in the grid, we want this show records button to be just below that submit button. So we say show records button dot grid, and it's going to be in row number, let's say row number 4 and column number 1. And if we run it, there we have it. It's exactly where we want it to be. Now we can add a function to our submit button by saying command is equal to a function. Let's just call this one submit. Let's come up here and define our function. And before we define our functions, let's just import our database, because we want to use the database inside the functions. So we say import SQLite3, and 3 stands for the current version. This lightweight database already comes installed with Python, so you don't need to install anything. And down here, let's just initiate our database, and we start with a comment first and say create a database or connect to one. So we create or connect to a database by typing connect is equal to SQLite3 dot connect, and then inside the parenthesis the name of the database. Let's just call this one studs. You can call it whatever you want to call it. This database does not exist yet, but when we run the code, it will be generated automatically. Our database is studs.db, db for database. And then we also need to initiate our cursor. So you say, write a comment and say create a cursor. We do this by typing cursor. I'm just calling it CUR. You can call it whatever you want. So cursor is equal to connect.cursor. The next thing to do is create a table in the database, and we comment and say create table in the database. Now we do this by typing cursor dot execute, and inside the parenthesis, think of a database as a collection of tables, and we create these tables using the cursor. Think of a cursor as that thing that we use to go into the database to create something for us or bring some information back to us. And inside the parentheses, we use these triple quotes. Inside the triple quotes, we say create a table and let's call this table students. You can call it whatever you want. And then open another parenthesis, and inside that students parenthesis, we are going to put the name of the student, which is text, the student ID, which will also be text, and the score, which will be an integer. Now we can create our functions, and we can start with the submit function. We first write a comment and say create the submit function. So we define this function by saying def submit and for now let's just return nothing. Now if we run the script, we see that everything works, there is no error, but it's still the same, nothing has changed. But we have created this database. For now, there is only a file, a database file, and we can find this in our directory. It's right here, studs.db.